Video 5, Linux Essentials, Chapters 8 and 9. And in Chapters 8 and 9, we're going to be looking at Managing Files and Directories, which is Chapter 8, and then Archiving and Compression, which is Chapter 9. First of all, Managing Files and Directories. One or two things to just sort of start you off with is Linux is case sensitive, so documents with a capital D, documents with lowercase d, for example, are different things, so please bear that in mind. It's important that you recognize that. And another thing that you need to keep in the back of your mind is the use of glob characters or wildcards. You might see $, question mark, asterisk in different places when you're using Linux. We'll have a look at some of those wildcards right now, actually. So we'll start with the asterisk. Now, when you're dealing with Windows, I'm wondering if you guys have ever heard of something called star.star, which is an asterisk, then a full stop, then an asterisk. It basically means every file name dot with every file type. So an asterisk character is used to represent 0 or more of any character in a file name. So the example that you've got there, T star, T asterisk, we tend to call it T star, is everything that begins with T with any other letters after it. You can compare and contrast that to another glob character which you might end up using a fair amount, which is a question mark. The question mark represents just one character. So in the example that you can see there, you've got T followed by 7 question marks, which means you're looking for an 8-character word or file name or directory name beginning with the letter T. So I've taken up the liberty of loading up my Debian machine and a terminal. So if I just go ls/ls space /, thank you, it will show us the root. And if I basically go echo T star, what will happen there is it will put T star on the screen. Now, as you can see here, we need to get used to syntax, and this is something that I'm hoping that you will be thinking about, because what echo does is it puts whatever it is that you're looking for onto the screen. And if I just type in T star, that's what it will put on the screen. So what I actually want to do is see what directories or files on the root begin with the letter T. And as you can see there, I put in the correct syntax and the command has done what I wanted it to do. It's found the temp directory is the only thing that begins with the letter T. If I type in echo on the root L star, it will show everything that begins with the letter L. And again, watch out for the syntax of the command. Hopefully you can see how it works. If I go echo on the root for question marks, what it will do is it will find everything on the root that has a 4-letter name. And as you can see there, the various things that we're looking for have come up. So hopefully from there you've got a bit of an idea about what happens with these wildcard or glob characters, the asterisk character and the question mark character. Now, in terms of managing files and directories, you've seen the list command, you've seen change directory. The next command that we're going to look at is going to be the copy command. The copy command, so the syntax is cp followed by the source followed by the destination. The cp copy command is used to copy files and copy directories as well. The whole idea about the way that it works is shown at the bottom, and as you can see, we have the cp command there, then we have this particular file path, something called etc hosts, and then the tilde, which means that the source is a hosts file, in this case inside a file off the root called etc, and then it wants to go in this particular instance into my home directory, which is represented by the tilde. Now I've brought up a terminal here. So if I basically show you something, for example, like cp etc hosts, which is the source, and I decide to put it in home /Robert, which is going to be my home directory, but I go hosts.copy, what it will do is it will not just do the copy, but it will also actually rename the file that goes into the destination as well. See that works, and of course nothing happens, which means we're fine. As it says here, when successful, cp command does not have any output. No news is good news, so that means that it works. So if we basically do a quick ls of the root, we can basically see that we've got our home directories listed. There's home, so inside there, let's see if we can go ls home/Robert. Let's see if it will list what's in my home directory, and there's the host copy file there. Now, from that perspective, I might as well show you this so that you guys can see what we're actually dealing with. It certainly won't do us any harm. The /etc directory that comes off the root contains configuration files which can generally be edited by hand in a text editor. Okay, now these are system-wide configuration files, so this host file must be a configuration file of some type. Now I'll put information on these different directory structures and everything else that I've got here. I'll pop that onto Moodle so that you guys can see this for reference. What it is it's something about the directory structure explained from a web page that I found. So I'll put that up on Moodle so that you can see it and have a look. So anyway, what's going on with this hosts file? Well, I don't know if you guys are aware of something called DNS, domain name system. You should be. If you want to get a domain name and resolve it to an IP address, what you can do is you can use DNS to do that. Now, you can also use this thing called a hosts file to do that on a local machine. So what the hosts file tends to be used for here, because you tend to use DNS when you're getting information from the internet, is if you want to change any addresses or instances of name resolution locally, you can do that by manually editing the hosts file. You can use it for testing and things like that. I'm sure if you guys Google hosts file, you'll be able to find some information about that. So from that perspective, there's no specific reason why you might want to make a copy of your host file and stick it in your home directory, but I suppose there's also no reason why you wouldn't want to not have a backup or your own version of a file like that you can develop, sort out, write in, sort out for whatever testing it is that you're doing. So how would that actually work if we did want to change this host file? Well, what I'll do is I'll type in sudo and I'll type in nano, and then what I will do is I will type in home/Robert/hosts copy, which is the name of the file I've been mucking about with earlier on. Saying password for Robert, fair enough, because we're going to be looking at changing a configuration file. And what's happened there is I put my password in and it's not liking it because I'm not an admin user, and it's saying this incident will be reported because it looks as if a standard user is trying to actually reconfigure something that's important to the operating system. So that's kind of interesting. So su switch user, and if we switch user to the root, now this isn't the root directory, this is the root user. It's the Linux equivalent of an administrator user. You get administrator users in Microsoft systems, you get root users in Linux. So again, I know what the password is because I put it in earlier on. And as you can see, I'm now root at Debian as opposed to Robert at Debian, but I'm still pointing to the Robert home directory. So if you think about it, that path there is the same as the Robert at Debian till thing at the top of that particular terminal screen. Same place, just looks different, but it's the same to be fair. Let's see what happens there if I do sudo nano, and because I'm in the right directory, if I just go hosts copy, it should even just let us in, and it does. And what you can see there is an IP address against a domain name. 127.0.0.1 is the loopback. 127.0.1.1 is actually also a loopback address, not that you need to worry about that. And can you see that we've got an entry for localhost, which means that the loopback address is pointing to the local machine. It will. And then this other alternative loopback address of 127.0.1.1, 127.0.1.1, I should say, excuse me, is pointing towards debian.debian.net, which is fine. If we wanted to change that, we could put in an IP address, and then against the IP address, we could put in a domain name or a computer name or whatever it was that we were dealing with. We'd be able to save that, and on we would be able to go. Control X for exit takes us back to there. So can you see what's happened with that copy command? And can you also see, I suppose, here what we're doing with some basic mucking around with some basic configuration files. So there we go. Anyway, there's the copy command. Happy so far. I suppose from the perspective of the copy command, there are switches that you guys should be aware of. /v, verbose, you've seen that before, and then this whole idea about changing a file name when you do the copy as well. The example that I've just given you shown there as well. So what else have we got? Well, when the copy command is in place, when you're using it, whatever terminology you want to use, if there is a destination file that already exists, the file will be overwritten. So do be careful with that. If you don't want to deal with accidentally overwriting things, don't forget there's the interactive option, CP -I, CP-I. Interactive means that you need to type in yes or no if you want to complete a file copy. And there's also no overwrite, CP-N. If you do end up copying a lot of files and you don't want to press N lots and lots of times, then that's a way of getting around that. Again, different options for different commands. Get used to using those, and I'm sure that all will be well. Copy does not copy directories by default. If you want to do that, you need to use the -R recursive option. And as you can see in that example that's given to you on the screen, the reason why you've got a couple of file copy errors there is because the -R option hasn't been used, and so the directories hasn't been moved in that example. So can you see it says CP-N, but it does not say CP-R. If you wanted to move those two directories, etc/skel for one, and then the directories that are inside them, then what would happen there is you would have to use CP-R as well as CP-N. So it would be CP-N-R, or you can actually write it as CP-NR. If you want to try those things, that would be fine. Again, get used to the options, get used to the syntax, get used to using the commands. Speaking of commands, you can copy, which is effectively copy and paste. You can move, which is essentially cut and paste. So if you are already aware that copying creates a second copy of a file, then that's fine. Move simply moves the file that you have to your different directory. Again, as opposed to CP, source and destination, it's MV, source and destination. And if you are trying to move stuff and you don't have the right permissions, you will get a permission denied error message. That's all part of it. Suffice to say, you can get that with the copy command as well. But again, copy, move, different options, get used to using those particular commands. Now here in this example, we've moved hosts into video. No particular reason why you would want to do that. Again, this is just an example of the command followed by a source, followed by a destination directory. Again, hopefully you'll be able to see from there the results of using that particular command. Moving and renaming, basically the same idea as for the copy command, which we've just shown you. So that shouldn't be problematic. If you can do it in copy, you can do it in move. That should be fine. And then, as you can see here, if a destination directory is not specified, the file is renamed using the destination file name and remains in the source directory. Okay, fair enough. Again, there's an example there for you to have a look at. So these here commands, some options to be aware of. You'll find that they are the same for copy, -I, -N, -V. We looked at that before. And of course, can you see there it says that there's no -r option as the move command does move directories by default. Okay, that's the only real difference between the copy and the move command. Suffice to say, again, I'm sure that you will get used to this soon enough. RM, remove, effectively delete, remove, whatever you want to call it. If you want to get rid of something, you can with the RM command. Note that files were deleted with no questions being asked, so be careful when using remove, as a user could end up deleting files that were not intended to be deleted. And if you do delete things, there is no way to get the files back. There is no recycle bin option in Linux. If you remove something, if you delete something, files are permanently deleted. Please be careful of that fact. Remove does not delete directories. Again, if you want to delete directories, it's the whole idea of the -r recursive option again. And there's some examples of that shown. Again, I'm sure if you go through the lab work that you can find on the NetAcad website, you will be able to trial that and see it for yourself and then hopefully get used to it. If you do delete a directory, as you can see there, rm -r, recursive videos, then all files and subdirectories are also deleted. If you're not sure about what you want to delete, you can always be very, very careful before you even start the process, or you can use the -i interactive option. Remove directories, rmdir, yeah, okie dokie. rmdir, remove directories command, that only works if the directory is empty. As you can see, if it turns out that you're trying to delete a directory that has content in it, it will not let you do it. The rmdir command only removes a directory if the directory is empty. Fair enough. And then finally, for now, in terms of managing files and directories, creating directories with makedir or mkdir. Again, can you see that what we are doing there is making a directory? It's a directory because it's mkdir as opposed to make a file, so do be aware of that. We'll look at file management like that on a different day. mkdir test, as you can see there, it's created a folder called test, and as you can see, it's made it in the user's home directory in that example, because that is where the prompt is currently pointing us. So copy, move, and then the creation and deletion of various items. Have a look at that content, have a practice, and then what we will do now is we will get into the next chapter, chapter 9, which is to do with archiving and compression. Linux Essentials chapter 9, archiving and compression. Are they the same thing? No, but you do get packages that actually archive and compress at the same time, such as WinZip. But suffice to say, we'll look at that in due course. Archiving combines multiple files into one. Say if you've got 10 or 20 files and you want to send them over to somebody else on the other side of the internet or the other side of a network or something like that. As opposed to send over 10 individual files, you can archive them and just send the one. You see that a lot. That's what it's there to allow you to do. Just makes things easier. But then what compression does is it makes files smaller by removing redundant information. Again, smaller file sizes, easier to transmit. Less files, easier to transmit. When I say transmit, I mean copy over to someone on the other side of the world or the other side of whatever it is, whatever network it is that you might be dealing with. So that's why these two things exist. Just have a look at that for a minute. You can read that to yourself. Lossy versus lossless compression, just a bit of background information that you guys might want to see. And then we should start to use some of these packages. So we'll start with compression, and there's something out there called gzip. Now, gzip can take a file, for example, a very, very large one, and compress it into something that is comparatively small. Now, have a look here at these different, if you like, file sizes for the same file, effectively. We've gone from 66,540 bytes down to 341. So as you can see, compression can actually make a file significantly smaller. In terms of how it does this, well, I'll let you Google that because I don't really want to go through compression algorithms right now. But I'm sure that if you're interested enough, you'll be able to find a YouTube video or a website entry that would explain that to you. For now, though, as you can see, there's quite big differences when you compress. And if you want to see what those compressed and decompressed values are, then have a look at this ls-l followed by the file name that you're dealing with, and of course the information is shown accordingly. So that's gzip, and obviously there with gzip, if you do use the -l option, it just brings additional information about the file to you so that you can see what's going on. For example, there the difference between the compressed and uncompressed file sizes is shown, the ratio being how much compression has actually taken place. If you want to decompress gzip, you gunzip. Well, you g-unzip is probably the best way to phrase it. Or you can use gzip -d to decompress as opposed to g-unzip. It's up to you. But suffice to say, if you decompress, then the file goes back to its original size. Again, I'm hoping that you'll be able to see that in the example that's shown on the screen. Other tools exist, bzip2, as well as xz and unxz. Again, not going to worry about that too much. I guess if you're used to using one package, you could be used to using others. But there's an example there that I found from the internet about somebody that was using bzip2. I just tend to use gzip myself. I don't tend to worry about the different versions too much, but they are there for you to be able to see. And then once you've done compression, we need to move on to archiving. Now, if you're dealing with something called archiving, you will probably see something called tar. Tar is a little package that allows you to create archives. You might hear of something called a tarball being created. And a tarball is an archive file. How does it work? Well, as you can see there, there's an example. -C, -F, or -CF, as you can see. So there's various switches that you need to be aware of. What we've got here is a tar file being created, which is called alpha_files, and that's being created by putting together a collection of files that have the file name alpha. So what we'll do here is we'll have a look at this example, and we'll change directory into documents. Let's do a listing of that so that we can see what's in there. And as you can see, there's a couple of files with alpha in the name. Alpha.txt, alpha third, alpha first, alpha second, they are all in there. That might show it a little bit more clearly. But suffice to say, we've got these example files that we can use to create our tarball. So if we want to create a tarball, we go tar, -CF is part of the syntax, alpha_files tar creates a tarball with that name. Just need to check my syntax. As you can see, I've made a mistake. .tar was much better than .tar because that wouldn't work. That's a mistake on my part, so that's fixed. And then if we type in alpha*, that would be put into our tarball everything that has the name of alpha in the file name. And as you can see, that seems to have happened because the screen didn't tell us that there was anything that was going on that was weird. So if we actually then type in ls-l and alpha_files.tar, it should be able to tell us some information about that particular file. And there it is. It has been created at the very least. So there we've got our tarball created. From there, we are starting to use this archiving package. So you can also compress while you're using tar as well. All you need to do is to add the Z option. As you can see, that's inside there. And can you see the difference in the file size to the example that we've had before? That just means that it's been compressed. And note the tar.gz file extension. So it looks as if the tarball actually uses gzip and gunzip, but it actually uses gzip to actually do the compression for us. Oh, there you go. Now, some other various bits and pieces to be aware of. You can list the contents of your archive by using the -t option as well. You see how these different options go together? -t, -j, -f, you just type it as -tjf. Again, if you have a look at that work inside the labs that are available inside NetAcad, it will show you various bits and pieces like that. Just getting used to all these different options, these different ways of using syntax. And then here, if you want to extract, you can do that. And in terms of the way that that particular command works, can you see that we've also got these various items of syntax, these various options that you need to put in, and the one that needs to go into the end is this -f, which is a file name type control scenario. But again, just have a look at the syntax and bear in mind that you have to type the commands in the right way in order to get things to behave in the way that you would like them to. Extracting. So there we go, there's this -v added as well. So there's these different modes, there's the create mode, there's the extract mode. Again, have a look at the various bits and pieces of lab work that you can do to show you how all of this works. And then, as opposed to using tar, you can use zip. Now, tar tends to be Linux, zip tends to be an archiving package that's used by Windows. You might have heard of WinZip specifically. And even though zip might be Windows based, we can still use zip as a package inside Linux. It's still supported. Pretty much does the same thing as the tar file. I think you're more likely to use tar than zip, but again, let's not worry too much about those various details. Let's just show you what's out there, and you can get used to using things and then pick a package that you might end up just choosing to use yourself when you're dealing with this kind of thing. With zip, if you want to copy subdirectories, there's -r for recursive. We've seen that several times now. In terms of unarchiving, you unzip. Okay, again, that shouldn't be weird. I'm sure that you're getting used to that by now. And if you use unzip, it unarchives and decompresses. It will ask you for confirmation of each file. That's just a feature of zip, I suppose. And finally, if you want to avoid needing to deal with the confirmation of each file, say if you've got hundreds of files in there, just copy the zip file into a different directory and it won't mind quite so much. So what have we got here? We've got archiving and compression. Again, have a think about how compression works, have a think about the difference between the two, and then get used to using gzip and get used to using tar, and I'm sure that all will be well, and you'll be able to use those features and the different options that go with it in the future. So that's chapter 8 and chapter 9. So we've come to the end of another video. Hope you found it useful, and I'm sure that I will see you guys at some point in the near or the very, very far future. Let's just see whenever that is. Okay, bye for now.